This is a relay project.
Real Talk starts right now. Here's Ryan Jesperson.
We got a big show today. In just a second, we're going to check in with probably the foremost commentator on big tobacco in Canada. You might have seen details of this proposed lawsuit, the settlement with big tobacco in the provinces, $32.5 billion. But something tells me that Rob Cunningham might not be happy about it with the Canadian Cancer Society. He's the author of the book Smoke and Mirrors, The Canadian Tobacco War. We're going to get some insight into the future of tobacco in Canada, litigation, what it means for the provinces, class action across the country and beyond. Plus, a couple of stories that have captivated people's attention over the past number of days. A horrific killing in our home city of Edmonton. A young security guard, 3 days on the job, shot in the back and killed an aspiring police officer. We're going to touch on that. Plus that CEO killing, that healthcare CEO in New York, an arrest made, charges laid. I'm just a little bit weirded out at how the general public has been following this story, almost celebrating this story, kind of a weird one. So we'll get into that, and I'll be looking to our live chat to see where Real Talkers are landing on that one as well. Is that one been rattling you a little bit too? They're having like look-alike contests for the killer, and people are cheering and celebrating and thinking. It's so messed up.
Over this weekend, I mean, that along with, I know we're going to talk about it as well, the CEO being killed.
That's what I mean.
It's just a scary time. Right?
Yeah, weird stuff. So we'll get into that story. We'll get to your comments on it. I want to let you know that this episode of Real Talk is presented by Business Career College, and they've got a new designation that they want to make sure is on the radar of all senior financial planners, financial analysts. There's polling that shows that more than 75% of the next generation of investors are interested in decentralized finance. They have questions about crypto. How could they not be paying attention to what Bitcoin's doing right now? You want to make sure that you have informed advice and counsel to give them. You don't want to be getting all your information from TikTok, Instagram Reels, right? Check out the CDAA designation. That's the Certified Digital Asset Advisor designation at Business Career College. They've been in the business of financial training since 1997, a long track record there. With the promo code Ryan20, they'll take 20% off your investment in this designation. So for financial planners, this is one you'll want to pay attention to. That's Ryan20 when you get started to register for that Certified Digital Asset Advisor designation today at businesscareercollege.com. That story, the CEO killing, a little bit later on in the show, but right now you may have been paying attention to this over the past number of weeks. Canada on the brink of a landmark $32.5 billion settlement with tobacco companies designed to address decades of healthcare costs and personal damages caused by smoking. The deal includes pretty much every province and territory, allocates about $25 billion for public health systems, just over $4 billion for two big class actions in Quebec, and about $2.5 billion for eligible smokers across Canada. It'll also allocate about $1 billion to fund research into tobacco-related diseases. Now, this is a result of years and years of litigation, starting with BC suing tobacco companies way back in 1998. Payments are expected to begin early 2025 with about $12.5 billion up front, the remainder tied to future tobacco sales revenues. So the payments will drop if tobacco sales drop. I don't know if that'll happen or not, but the deal has critics and advocacy groups in particular arguing that it allows tobacco giants to continue to operate without fully addressing the harm that's being caused. Experts are also highlighting the need to reinvest funds into prevention, tobacco cessation programs, and mental health supports. Rob Cunningham is a lawyer and a senior policy analyst with the Canadian Cancer Society. He's been involved in tobacco control for almost 40 years, and he's the author of the book Smoke and Mirrors, The Canadian Tobacco War. Rob, thanks for making time for us. Welcome to Real Talk.
Thanks very much, Ryan. Great to be with you.
Yeah, the threat of big tobacco paying up, I guess, has been hovering for decades and decades. Is this, in your mind, a meaningful step forward, or where do you land on this?
Well, certainly the payments of $32.5 billion over many years are significant. But, where we find that this deal is insufficient is the lack of any specific action to reduce smoking. And the public health disaster from smoking caused by tobacco company behaviors over decades that you referred to, that continues. It's a leading preventable cause of cancer, of disease and death in Canada. In Alberta, there's 4,400 deaths a year. In Canada, there's 46,000 deaths per year. And we have a lot of work to do. And, if we look at the U.S. experience, they had measures to reduce smoking in their settlement between state governments for their lawsuits on the healthcare cost of smoking. We should be able to do a lot better here in Canada, but we're not right now. And we want this deal changed before it's finalized.
Why do you think that there's not, like, as you might characterize it, like meaningful action? Is meaningful action, or the most meaningful action, not being taken because, quite frankly, there's so many smokers? Is it politically unpopular to really dig in?
Well, we do have 3.6 million Canadians who still smoke, but we've seen governments, federally, provincially, locally, over many years take action to reduce smoking. We have made progress, very significant progress to reduce smoking. And, there's so much that we can do. For example, some promotion remains that can be banned. In the United States settlement, they had marketing restrictions. In the U.S. settlement, they had millions of pages of secret internal tobacco company documents made public, and they created a foundation independent of government to reduce tobacco use. And that foundation continues to this day. None of these measures are in the Canadian settlement. We should be having these 8 million pages of documents received by provinces as part of pre-trial discovery made public. The tobacco industry has done the best research of anyone. Their cover-up should end. Those documents should be made public. And this proposed settlement, does create a foundation. It's going to be able to do research. It's going to be able to do certain other initiatives, but you cannot have programs to reduce smoking, such as smoking cessation campaigns and programs, awareness campaigns. Those are very much needed. It's very much in the interest of provinces to reduce smoking, because we want to have healthier people in our provinces, and we want to reduce healthcare costs going forward. And so it's a win-win for public health and for provincial finances if we make these changes.
Rob, Erica's chiming in on our Real Talk live chat powered by Park Power. She says, I know smoking is pretty much the worst habit that you can legally do for your health. She says, but if I choose to do it anyway, the tobacco companies got to now pay me? She says, no. She says, what about choices and personal accountability? What would you say?
Well, the overwhelming majority of people who smoke began as underage teenagers, maybe even preteens, before the age of responsibility. They got addicted. And when you have addiction, you don't have the same choice. Most smokers want to quit. And so the tobacco companies had decades of wrongdoing, such as advertising to teenagers, advertising to women, misleading advertising, including for so-called light and mild cigarettes, public relations campaigns to say it's not proven that smoking causes cancer, even though their internal research and documents said otherwise, opposing laws to reduce smoking, and on and on and on. And so the tobacco company, that's why provinces sued, because there was so much in terms of billions of healthcare costs that resulted, more than $500 billion for all provinces collectively. And so while provinces, were not the ones who were choosing to smoke, they paid healthcare costs. And for individuals, the courts found in the Quebec class action, the tobacco companies were liable. And so that's part of the reason for the compensation to certain categories of individuals as part of the settlement.
Can you take us into the settlement? Like, give us a sense of kind of what it actually says, and sort of give us the ability to chat about it with our friends in meaningful fashion. We always want to cut to the heart of it.
Well, you gave a bit of a very good outline earlier on. But part of it is compensation to provinces and territories, $24.7 billion over many years. Some paid initially. Alberta's going to get $3.1 billion of that over time, with maybe $300 million plus, going to the contingency fee for its lawyers out of that. For individuals outside the Quebec class actions, there's $2.5 billion. For certain individuals that have lung cancer, throat cancer, emphysema, diagnosed within certain dates in 2015 to 2019. And there's a website where people can get information to see about their eligibility and compensation details. That's tobaccoclaimscanada.ca, tobaccoclaimscanada.ca for individuals across the country to get more information. And then there is this foundation that we've been talking about. It's $1 billion of long-term funding. From our perspective, the mandate is extremely narrow compared to what it should be. And to keep in mind that this is a proposed settlement. It has not received final approval yet. It will have to be considered by a court, reviewed before approval. And from our point of view, it needs to be modified in significant ways before final approval is given.
What do you see as, like, I'm not going to sort of ask you questions in the context of you as a big tobacco CEO. You're certainly not. But what are the big tobacco CEOs thinking right now? I mean, like, I guess the goal here for smoking cessation advocates, for those that would be driving these type of lawsuits, they'd love to see big tobacco put out of business. And I think that a lot of other folks would probably roll their eyes and say, well, that's obviously never going to happen. What do you think the future of legal tobacco sales looks like in Canada?
Well, of course, we want to continue progress to reduce smoking. From a tobacco company perspective, they have to be happy to the extent that it's going to be business as usual. They're still going to be able to do what they're currently able to do in terms of business operations, marketing, with the deal in its current form. It is the case that, as you mentioned, a proportion of their profits, initially 85%, going down to 70%, are going to have to be provided to provinces and territories to pay, what has been committed to be owed to them. But in terms of actual restrictions on the abilities of the companies to operate, it's going to be, essentially business as usual. From our perspective, it shouldn't be like that. In that respect, they've dodged this bullet. And these are very large global companies: British American Tobacco, Philip Morris International, Japan Tobacco International. They own the three major Canadian companies. And so, they realize that there's global implications to whatever outcome is happening in Canada.
How do you think this settlement could influence or impact, I guess, like emerging nicotine products, or not really tobacco products? I'm thinking of like vaping or those like Zyn pouches. I mean, the things that you see pretty popular. How do those factor into this, do you think?
Well, I think it does provide, and there have been some class action cases against Juul, a vaping company, filed in Canada. Many more cases in the U.S. have been filed and they've been settled. With not only payments but also restrictions on the company's marketing activities. It does send a message, that there could be significant financial consequences depending on how you market your product, and the health impacts of addiction and other health impacts that arise. And certainly we've been concerned by the types of marketing that we've seen for vaping products in Canada appealing to youth, and for the nicotine pouches that have been marketed in Canada. When Imperial Tobacco launched them a little over a year ago, they had lifestyle ads similar to what we used to see for cigarette lifestyle ads, with happy young people in a social setting, in a restaurant, associated with athletic activities. It's appealing to kids, appealing to teenagers. And so that's not the type of marketing we should be having for these addictive products. We urged Health Minister Mark Holland to take action. He did take action. We're supportive of the new restrictions on nicotine pouches. With respect to, there's very much a regulatory aspect to this, and we're urging Associate Health Minister Yara Sachs to finalize a national regulation to restrict flavors in vaping products. That's something that's very much needed to reduce youth vaping.
Do you have Alberta Ganger in our live chat says vaping is safer than smoking? I think probably on certain fronts. I'm obviously not a physician, but I think anecdotally it appears as though you could probably support that argument. But is vaping safe? Like, what's your take on it? What would you tell your family?
So Health Canada has indicated that vaping is less harmful than smoking if a person quits smoking altogether. Mm-hmm. However, many people have dual use. They continue to both smoke and to vape. And that's not in terms of the indication what Health Canada says. Another factor is that we have a large number of people who are vaping who have never smoked. And at the onset among youth and young adults of these never smokers, that's not supposed to be happening. And it's been growing, and as of 2022, 730,000 Canadians who vape who've never smoked. By 2024, that's undoubtedly gone up again. And so that's why we need regulations. We're not going to ban vaping products, but we need to have proper regulations to protect youth.
Do you see an ethical dilemma in allowing tobacco companies to continue to operate under this settlement? Like if it truly was, I mean, and I believe it to be so, but I mean, if it truly is so dangerous, why allow companies to continue to sell tobacco?
So there's a couple of answers to that question. The first is it's not possible to ban cigarettes in Canada today because of addiction. We'd have contraband overnight. We know the historic experience when alcohol was banned. So when we get to a much lower level of prevalence, very low prevalence, the feasibility is different, but we're not there. And the other thing is that maybe we could have had a model where you would have a trust that would operate the tobacco industry on a nonprofit basis, or where you have government controlled, or authorized specialty entities that would do it. In some provinces for cannabis or for alcohol, whether it's at the wholesale distribution level or retail distribution, but not all provinces, you have a government controlled entity. So there could be different models, but the tobacco companies are going to be able to continue on a for-profit basis after the settlement, with the type of marketing and activities that they're doing before the settlement.
Do you see Ms. KD in our live chat says that we're going to see the same thing in the future with alcohol? Can you see that happening? I mean, or is there? I mean, are there lawsuits brewing right now along those same lines?
Well, not to the same extent. I think that there are some brewing. Certainly there are health effects from alcohol, and I think that this is not an issue that's really current in terms of proceedings, but there has been more discussion with respect to that. Certainly, there's been more public discussion of the health effects of alcohol, including various different types of cancer. There was a report, updated evidence that was released not that far in terms of months ago. And so, there are measures that governments can do, and whether it's in Canada or internationally, there is more discussion in this area.
Rob, is there anything else that you want on folks' radar as they're discussing this? I know that it's still being described as a proposed settlement, right? Like nothing's really signed off on yet. Are you holding out hope that you might see changes to make it more meaningful? Or, I mean, where do you leave us at right now at this point?
Well, yes, we are very much urging that significant changes be made to this proposed deal before it's finalized. In terms of steps ahead, on Thursday, there's going to be a meeting of creditors to vote on it. Which is mainly the provinces, the territories, the class action, another group of victims. That vote is expected to be adopted. And then at the end of January, there's going to be a court hearing. It's called a sanction hearing, as to consider whether to approve this. And so between now and then, we would very much like this deal to be modified, to be strengthened. We have a one-time historic opportunity that's never going to come again to control this industry, to reduce tobacco use, to save lives. So we have whether it's in Alberta, Health Minister Adriana LaGrange or Justice Minister Amory or their counterparts across the country, we should push forward on this. Your individuals could go to our website, stopbigtobacco.ca, to get more information or to send a message to their MLA. At the same time, we can remember that there's more that can be done. Whether at the provincial level, whether it's increasing tobacco taxes, having a minimum age 21 for both tobacco and e-cigarettes, the way PEI is done, the way the United States has done, instead of right now age 18 in Alberta, or to have controls on the number of retail outlets, or a whole series of other measures. We need a comprehensive approach. We need to keep at it.
Are you, in your estimation, you say you'd like to see maybe the smoking age raised to 21 or 21 to purchase cigarettes. Are you confident that the contraband tobacco scenario, the situation in Canada is adequately being patrolled? I mean, I feel like everybody kind of knows somebody that has a way to buy menthol smokes or smokes off the back of a truck. Like, what's your assessment of how well we're doing as a nation, or maybe province to province, on making sure that 13 and 14-year-olds or whomever aren't getting their hands on cigarettes?
Yeah, For the minimum age, I don't think the illegal contraband is much of an issue. There is an issue with retailers who sell vaping products and cigarettes to underage youth. If you increase the age, most provinces in Canada, almost all, have a minimum age, except three. Alberta is one of the three that have age 19. Alberta has 18. PI is 21. So I think going from 19 to 21 or 18 to 21 in the case of Alberta is very feasible. PI has very much demonstrated the feasibility of age 21. Tremendous support in public opinion polls in the neighborhood of 80% across the country. That's extremely high. People do not want kids to vape. They do not want them to smoke. And the evidence is, from the Institute of Medicine, that if you were to increase in the United States, if you increase the minimum age from 15 to 17, youth smoking is going to go down by 25%. Among those, if you increase the minimum age, among 15 to 17-year-olds, it'll go down by 25%. Among 18 to 19-year-olds, it'll go down by 15%. So it requires no incremental cost for government. It's the same inspectors, and it's a very straightforward measure, supported by the evidence and by the public. The contraband issue is separate. Yes, there can be actions there, but clearly, in terms of preventing youth smoking, youth vaping, the age 21 is an opportunity.
Rob, when you said a couple of minutes ago, you said this is like the last chance. This is like a one-time opportunity to do something meaningful. Are you saying that just because the settlement's going to happen? Are you saying once it's signed off, you can't do it twice? Is that what you're alluding to?
That's exactly right.
Yeah.
Because this settlement, a provision is going to eliminate all liability for tobacco companies for anything that's happened in the past. And so you will not be able to sue them again, with respect to their past behavior. And that's why these documents are so important to be made public. If they're not made public, they're going to be destroyed. And that would be a tragedy because we need to, have all of this information in the public domain, all of this research on smoking attitudes, knowledge, and behaviors. It's very beneficial, to inform, better initiatives to reduce smoking. And, the tobacco companies should not be able to continue their cover up. The United States had one settlement that they did. And, there's critiques as to whether it was good or whether it was bad. But this chance does not come again. And that's why it's so important. And it's in the interest of provincial governments and territories to ensure that this settlement is as effective as possible. I'm just quickly Googling as we're talking. This is the Tobacco Master Settlement Agreement. Is that the one you're talking about in the States, 1998? Philip Morris, R.J. Reynolds, Brown and Williamson, and Lorillard. Is that right? The original participating manufacturers? That's exactly correct. Okay, and it was $206 billion over 25 years, right? That's correct. Okay. Did it accomplish something? Well, it did. Because you had the marketing restrictions and you had, there was a result of that, those payments, the prices increased. In the United States, they had a very difficult political reality of increasing tobacco taxes. So there was a mechanism in that settlement, similar to increasing tobacco taxes, which does reduce smoking. That's not the way the Canadian settlement is structured. It's more as a percentage of the industry's profits, not forcing them to increase their prices. But yes, and all of those documents that became public in the U.S. Were a game changer to knowing what the industry did behind the scenes. It's been there's been hundreds of academic papers that have been published in various journals as a result of those documents. What do we see trend-wise when prices on tobacco go up? Regardless of what's driving the price, whether it's increased taxes, or whether it's manufacturer, whatever it is, does it actually cut down on rates of smoking, or do smokers typically just pony up and pay more? Well, of course, many smokers will continue to pay more, but others will quit or they're going to smoke less. And that's very good from a health perspective. And that's why we've urged provincial governments to increase their taxes. And it does work. And the manufacturers have increased their own prices over a 10-year period by $31.80. So they've had massive price increases of their own. They criticize governments for increasing tobacco taxes. So it's a bit hypocritical, when they say governments shouldn't do something, but they themselves are increasing their own prices. And so we do want governments to continue to increase tobacco taxes, and youth are especially responsive to higher prices. They're less likely to be addicted at that point, and so it has an especially beneficial impact to reduce youth smoking. And now, all provinces and territories either have their own tax on vaping products, or they participate in the federal tax on e-cigarettes and get half the revenue. So we have begun, in the last few years, to have a tax on vaping products, on e-cigarettes. Now, recent developments in terms of the emergence of disposable e-cigarettes have really made this category of e-cigarettes super cheap. It's almost like the price of air. These products, if we look at what Imperial Tobacco launched just 24 months ago in terms of its 500 puff product, they've increased the puffs. There's now a 50,000 puff volume product on the market, and the price per puff in terms of nicotine goes down. So the retail price of these disposable e-cigarettes has gone down by 96%. So it's really undermining the vaping taxes that exist. It's really make it incredibly affordable for youth. And so there's a need to be continually monitoring the tobacco companies, this evolving marketplace for vaping products. And we do need to protect youth. The rates of youth vaping are very, very high. And, again, that's why we're urging Associate Health Minister Yara Sachs federally to finalize that national regulation to restrict flavors in e-cigarettes.
Rob Cunningham is a senior policy analyst, a lawyer with the Canadian Cancer Society. You can check out his book, Smoke and Mirrors, The Canadian Tobacco War. Thanks for doing this, Rob. We appreciate it.
Thanks very much, Ryan.
Yep, you bet. I want to get to the live chat on this because there's a whole bunch of comments, and we'll dig a little bit into that class action in the States. I was just reading about it, Johnny, as we're talking. September 1950, an article first published in the British Medical Journal linking smoking to lung cancer and heart disease. And then in 1954, the British doctors' study confirmed that suggestion, based on which the government then issued advice that smoking and lung cancer rates were related. But then by the mid-1950s, individuals in the U.S. started to sue companies responsible for manufacturing and marketing cigarettes, and then that's kind of where that ball got rolling into the 1990s when that settlement happened. I've been telling you I've been making my way through Mad Men. I had never watched the TV series.
What?
I never watched it. And so
what year is it?
I know, for the past probably the past 2 months, I've been kind of like making my way. I'm in season 7 right now. And it's like
they like darting on there.
All they do is smoke.
Yeah.
But people will know that have watched that there's kind of a moment where that ad agency that's been representing Lucky Strike kind of has this. Well, it kind of there's a turning point.
Oh yeah,
and
there's a certain scene that's pretty viral on social media.
A certain scene that I don't know if anybody hasn't watched it. I don't think you need to do spoiler alerts when shows are like 15 years old. But yeah, so pretty interesting. Like back in the 1950s, it's like we feel like we look back and we think the 1960s, 1970s they didn't know. They did know.
Of course they did.
And we now definitely know. But people are still smoking. I'm seeing some reports in our live chat, powered by Park Power, on what people are paying for smokes. People are saying anywhere from like $19 to like mid-20s, like $25 for a pack of smokes, which just seems wild to me, especially for people smoking a pack a day. But then you've got kind of the personal freedom thing too, where I asked Rob the question about do you think that the government should continue to allow tobacco to be sold in Canada? And you sort of go, well, I don't know if we're really big into government regulation on absolutely disallowing products. Now, cocaine's not legal, right? I mean, like opioids are not available typically over the counter. Like there's certain things that you're not allowed to sell yet.
Well, we'll see.
We'll see.
Yeah.
I could see that changing.
I don't think banning is the answer. You're just going to drive everyone to the black market. It's going to continue. It's going to get more dangerous. What's in the tobacco now, et cetera. But I think raising the age, I mean, smoking in the States is 21. I know drinking is as well, and that's kind of like the adult line in the U.S. for most places. But I think raising the age, those numbers he said, and I agree. I think we already knew this already, but the majority of smokers start smoking before it's legal age to smoke. It's not like they turn 18, they turn 21, and they're like, hey, I'm going to try this adult substance now and see if I like it. I mean, I'll get personal. I smoked for a while. I was never a huge smoker, like maybe 3 or 4 a day.
Yeah.
But of course, I started smoking when I was like 16, right? And then luckily, here's a vape story. Vaping got me off of it. And then I moved to BC. And so I would smell cigarette smoke. It disgusts me now. Like now I'm like, wow, I would never inhale a cigarette again. It's gross. What was I thinking? But when I moved to BC, the tax on vaping went up like a month after we got there. And all of a sudden, a vape that I would buy that would last me maybe a week was now like double the cost. And so I stopped vaping as much. So I do think taxing helps. I think it prevents people, like people always talk about this with the carbon tax and whatever. It does. Like when you're like, hey, I can't afford to pay $30, $40 for this thing to hold in my pocket to vape with because I've got to buy, I need half of that for groceries or whatever for the week. I think it works. So
but I don't know if people buy groceries in that case. That's the thing I worry about.
Well, because they're addicted, right? But then I came back to Alberta. Boom! All of a sudden, it's half the price, and I started vaping more. So now I use vaping just if I want to have a cigarette, if I think about it, which I never would, but just whatever, I'll have some. But I'm trying to get off that now. I want to try like Zins or whatever. I think next is just kind of because like I said, I wish I'd never touched nicotine. I think it's more. I mean, of course, I've never done some crazy hard drugs, and I wouldn't put myself in that place to know what it's like to be addicted to stuff like fentanyl and heroin and all that. But I would say nicotine is just like I can't escape it. It's probably going to be with me my whole life because I started doing it when I was like 16.
I bet you could beat it.
Well, I'm almost there. Like, it's not like a thing that controls me, but it's always in the back of my head,
Real Talkers are getting personal here, and I want to get to your comments in the live chat in just a quick second. But first, I want to put a few things on your radar. Plus, we have an update from Real Talker Michael, who's just checked in. Did you see the sale fell through on those Gretzky and Ricci hockey cards? I didn't know that. Oh, my gosh. We got a lot of ground to cover on this show. But first, I want to ask you what you're doing on January 25th of 2025. If you're anywhere near the Metro Edmonton region, I want to invite you to join us at Chamber Ball 2025. This is your golden opportunity to attend an event, of course, the premier black tie event for Edmonton's business community. Step into a world of unmatched elegance and sophistication. The Chamber Ball is Edmonton's premier social and business celebration where the city's most influential, innovative, and inspired leaders gather for an evening of connection and to raise a glass to the future of Edmonton's business community. I'm so proud to be hosting it alongside the Edmonton Chamber CEO, Doug Griffiths. You can get your tickets today. That's January 25th. It will sell out. Get your tickets today at edmontonchamber.com. At UCAN Youth Services, they are doing remarkable work for at-risk young adults. We're talking 18 to 25 years old that, quite frankly, just need a little prompt. They just need opportunity to get onto a path of economic independence. And at ucan.ca, you can learn more about the work they're doing to accomplish exactly that. Their approach is relentless. They're empowering young people so they have the knowledge, the support, the skills to remove themselves from at-risk lifestyles. They're helping young people transition back into employment as well, out of harm's way and onto a path of economic independence. You can donate or learn more about the program by visiting ucan.ca. And for those of you this winter that are going to navigate the headache of a sewer backup, a basement flood, maybe this time of year a burst pipe, whatever it is that is messing with your vibe, I want you to remember Complete Care Restoration. For more than 25 years, they've been helping folks restore properties and rebuild peace of mind. This is a family-owned business that started in a garage and now, of course, has grown to one of the biggest in Western Canada. They work directly with your insurance company, meaning they save you the hassle and the headache. Remember the name Complete Care Restoration.
Yeah, Cactus saying in the chat, I disagree on nicotine harder to quit than hard drugs. That's not what I was saying. I'm just saying of all the things I've done, nicotine is the one thing that
Well, it probably depends on who you're talking to. I mean,
That's what I said.
Probably a case-by-case basis. I
I've
know
never
people
been
that
in
have
those
like
shoes.
sworn off tobacco like cold turkey and it's worked. Others struggle with it for years.
I talked to a guy this weekend at a wedding in Banff who said like he met a girl and knew she was the one, and like on their first date they were listing likes and dislikes. She's like, smokers hate him, and he was a lifelong smoker, and he quit that day.
Oh wow.
And 2 years later they got engaged. They were at an engagement party and their friends were congratulating this woman, being like, I can't believe this guy's been smoking for 20 years. As soon as he met you, he quit. She had no idea. He had never told her.
Wow.
And so I know there's people out there that can do it just like that, right?
Yeah.
If there's a reason.
It's amazing what love can do, John. Yeah. On our Real Talk live chat powered by Park Power, your friendly local utilities provider, Alberta Girl says these companies that continue to exploit consumers are just legalized drug pushers: tobacco, vape, alcohol, opioids. You know, she goes on to say people need to get smart and stop letting them profit off making us sick. Fair enough.
Sure, but
well, I mean, here's the thing too, where
big companies weren't making tobacco, people would be still farming it and doing smoking tobacco.
And there's also like, and this is not a stretch. I mean, it just depends on your cultural traditions. I mean, tobacco's big for a lot of people's religious ceremony. Like it means different things to different people, you know, and I think that's relevant to point out as well.
But when we're talking about big tobacco, some of those things he was saying, like it's clear. The marketing, I know you don't see it anymore. Like now marketing of tobacco is pretty much gone from all media.
Pretty much,
when you see it, people just rag on it and are like, what the fuck is this doing in my feed? But like, you know, when I was younger, you'd watch some of those ads, you'd be like, this is... They're trying to make this sexy and like for younger people, and it's just
it works though.
It definitely does.
It works.
The majority of people start when they're young.
Yeah, Mark Doran's in our chat from the Polluter Pay Federation. He's been on the show before. Mark says smoking is a choice. Breathing fugitive and purposely vented natural gas released by an irresponsible oil and gas industry is not. But get this, here's his kicker. He says if we can hit big tobacco, why can't we hit big oil and gas? Great point, Mark. I don't want to get off track, but that's a great point. Ms. KD says, when I lived in Vancouver, I bought illegal smokes at the corner store for half the price. Justin, kind of like what you said, Johnny, says,
I've never done that. Yeah.
Justin says making these products illegal just gives business to the black market. He says, I'm not
100%.
He says, I'm not pro cigarettes, but prohibition just doesn't work, and we would lose a lot of tax revenue from sin taxes. Justin, I 100% agree. You can obviously draw a direct line to the reality of cannabis sales in Canada right now as well. It's part of the reason why legal cannabis industry is struggling in Canada, because so many people are still going to their guy.
Oh, yeah.
So many people are still, people call it the gray market. It's not the gray. There's no gray. There's white and black. There's no gray. Unless it's Real Talk. There's gray areas on Real Talk, but not in cannabis sales. People are just sort of, you know, I mean, I guess sharing their own personal stories and stories on quitting. And, you know, Randy says, my mom passed away from lung cancer due to lifelong smoking. She could never quit. She tried the patch. She tried a whole bunch of things. My dad got in a couple of minor car accidents because they had to go out and get her cigarettes. That from Randy. I mean, folks have those stories of the addiction and just kind of how it takes hold, you know, and influences, and not just you, but your family. Frank, Swankin' Frankie says, so what are you telling me here? I should quit at age 56? I've got zero related symptoms associated to this wretched habit. That from Swanky Frankie. I mean, look at like, what about
Some
George
people
Burns,
are lucky, but
Betty Davis?
Yeah.
I mean, these 100-year-old smokers that never get sick.
Well, it's going to affect you eventually.
Anecdotal. I've told the story before on this show of my friend who was in high school, a horrific car accident, and it was a rollover, and the only person that was killed in the vehicle was the person wearing the seatbelt, which is just a fluke. That doesn't mean that you shouldn't wear your seatbelt. I mean, there are stories out there all the time. You know, we're our dear friend Supriya Dwivedi, her husband passed away from lung cancer, never smoked in his life. You know, I mean, there's weird things that happen that have nothing to do with smoking or everything to do with smoking. But I see Lauren here pointing out Barb Tarbox as well. What a legacy she left. Tragically, Barb died, I think she was 40 when she died. And if you buy smokes or you see packs of smokes in Canada, you've seen Barb on that, on those packs, on many of those warnings. You know, going through chemo, and she's got her, you know, her hair's out, and she's sitting on the bed and basically says, I wish I would have never started. You know, there are many Barb Tarboxes out there.
Yep.
She's the one whose family, I guess, agreed to allow her Lauren says she was a brave lady, and we need that type of awareness. Greg says, what about banning nicotine? Others are saying we should regulate price by puff. That was kind of an interesting one that we heard from Rob. I've never heard the price by puff before, but an interesting way to kind of look at how things are priced and taxed.
It is crazy every time you go to buy a vape now. It's just higher and higher the puff and higher the price. And I remember when vapes first came out, they were like $8 to $10. Now they're $30 some of them are like $50. You know what I mean? And you take one and then it lasts you a week. So if you think of that over a month, that's $200. Yeah, it's a lot of money. But yeah, I think the main point from that conversation is protecting younger people from starting in the first place.
Totally.
Because all the smokers you talk to who want to quit or have quit or like we were just talking about Barb who gets sick, they all say, I wish I never touched that cigarette when I was 14, 15. I wish I never tried to look cool, And it's so cliche to say now when you're older, because when you're younger, you're like, screw the man, I'm going to smoke. But then when you're older, you're like, what have I done? Right. But I mean, banning nicotine, you can't. Justin was right. You're going to drive everything to the black market. Things are here. They're around. Let's just regulate them properly.
Well, and also I just think like logistically, Rob tells us an estimate. What did he say? 3.6 million, something like say 3.5 million Canadians smoke. Let's call that approximately 8% of the population.
Which is down, which is great.
Sure. But like if 8% of the population is addicted to something, or let's say 8% uses it and maybe 5% is addicted to something, banning it, 5%, like 3 people on every city bus, like, 2 people in every room. How are you going to actually carry that out? Although that's also kind of a defeatist attitude. Like if you were to say, well, it would be hard to do, so we're not going to do it, then I guess you wouldn't ever do anything. I don't know. To me, banning's not the thing. I'm not a cigarette smoker in particular, but I enjoy cigars. I've talked about that before. And I know that there's been steps taken to try to get those rates down. And some of it's just been annoying. Like cigars have always had these bands on them where there's been artwork on them, and the cigar manufacturers, that's kind of a way to sort of,
entice.
Just add, but do you see a lot of 14-year-olds smoking cigars?
No.
And so
you don't inhale
bans,
cigars like you do cigarettes.
No.
You don't smoke cigars every 30 minutes like smokers do, right?
Yeah. So Canada's banned the bans on cigars, but whether or not that's effective, I'm not sure. I don't really know.
I don't think so. If you're going into a cigar shop, you're pretty much you're all in already.
Yeah. Tracy D says every photo of my parents and their family in the 1950s, everybody was smoking.
Oh, dude, my grandmother used to drive a school bus way back in the day, and she would smoke while driving the school bus.
Really?
Oh, yeah.
Oh, that's
way
amazing.
back in the
And
day.
probably nobody cared. They
No.
wouldn't even think twice about it.
Not even.
They wouldn't even think twice about it. Justin helped me out, by the way, with Mad Men. He says, don't worry. He says, there are quite a few shows on my shame list that I missed at the time. Justin says, I did watch Mad Men, but I never watched Sopranos or The Wire.
You didn't watch Sopranos?
I've watched like half of the first season of Sopranos, lost interest in The Wire. I think I'm just wired, I'm just different than...
we both have a little ADHD.
I never watched
here,
Lost.
But The Sopranos is like... That's
it worth it?
That's an incredible show.
Yeah. Wanted to touch on a couple of stories that are making news, around the world. One of them out of our home city of Edmonton. This is absolutely brutal. You probably heard on December 6th, Harshandeep Singh, 20 years old, a security guard that had been on the job for 3 days, says his family, was shot while working at an Edmonton apartment complex, actually not far from our studio here downtown. Incident occurred just after midnight. We're not going to show the video. There's video that's circulating. Police say they're aware of the video. They've not confirmed that it is the incident itself, but it appears to be the case where this young man, 20 years of age, wearing a high visibility jacket, is confronted by 2 individuals that police have identified as Evan Rain and Judith Soto, who've now been arrested and charged with first-degree murder. Confronted just after midnight in the hallway, pushed down a stairwell, this young man was, and then shot in the back. Despite efforts by police and paramedics, he later succumbed to his injuries at hospital. This is a young man originally from India that had moved to Canada on a student visa, seeking a better future. He wanted to be a police officer, and he was actually a student at a post-secondary Northwest College, I believe, downtown as well. His death has sparked significant public outcry. You've probably seen it on your social media. I've seen it all over mine with a GoFundMe. We want to highlight that as well. Trying to raise support for his family. This GoFundMe page has already raised about $122,000, which I think says a lot about how this story is resonating with people. But even more so, maybe your bigger picture, it's highlighting the vulnerability of security guards and the need for better safety measures in high-risk environments. I think it's also really, really lighting a fire under people that are hearing about the criminal history of Evan Rain and Judith Soto. Rain in particular, who was arrested and charged for kidnapping a woman allegedly earlier in the year, and a long rap sheet. An absolutely brutal circumstance.
Yeah, I have some stills. I don't know if you want to put them up, but it's not video. But
sure, I mean,
I think this is just the incident.
This is him.
We don't want to
being
show the
confronted
video
by what looks like a shotgun and then pushed down the stairs. The guy's doing his job, patrolling a apartment building, and who knows what he may have interrupted. Obviously, I mean, it looks like he clearly wrong place, wrong time. I wonder if perhaps there was an armed robbery that was about to go down. You don't know. Yeah. But I mean, pushed. I mean, whatever. What am I going to say here that's not so obvious? But pushed down the stairs and then shot in the back. I mean, it's just, there's no sense to this. It's just an absolutely terrible circumstance. And I have on this show many times talked about how deeply frustrated I am, and I know I'm not the only one. I know there's millions of Canadians that are just sick and tired and fed up of a justice system that continues to release people back into the general public after committing horrific crimes. There's zero accountability. We do not take this seriously as a society. And if we did, then Evan Rain would still be in jail from his previous violent crimes. And this 20-year-old man, Harshandeep Singh, who wanted to be a police officer, he comes to Canada looking for a better life, and then he wants to give back. In Canada, he wants to contribute his services. He wants to do what he can to put himself in harm's way to make Canada a safer place to live, and instead he is dispatched in the most horrific, violent, disrespectful and disgusting way by a guy that should have been locked away with the key thrown out years ago.
Yeah, and I know when I was young, and lots of people still do, they like to rag on security guards. But man, in a lot of instances, especially nowadays, you're dealing with situations that are pretty much like police officers. A lot of them, most of them, I know in Ontario, some of them carry weapons. I know, you can't carry a firearm. That reminds me of a story, the Ledge now. Pretty much their security guards are going to be like peace officers now, right? They're going to be carrying firearms. But
of course they should be.
Of course. It's a dangerous job. And look what this guy is doing. He's in a dangerous situation, has no way to protect himself against multiple assailants. It's a really, really tough job for not the amount of money you should be getting paid. And you're almost, that situation is what police officers deal with. So it's just very sad.
So, and the Conservative Party is, released on this. I mean, they want to pin this on Justin Trudeau. I don't know, but I will say this. If Pierre Poilievre can do something about this as Prime Minister, I'll support at least that. He says early indications suggest that Rain has a known prior violent history, media reports aligning with his current age. In 2018, that Evan Rain charged for a violent kidnapping in Wetaskiwin, just south of Edmonton, a woman forced into the trunk of a car at gunpoint. In 2022, Evan Rain of Paul First Nation, just west of Edmonton, 45 minutes, faced 29 charges for a violent robbery involving firearms in northern Saskatchewan. I could read through the charges, but I think 29 charges says it all. And yet this is a guy that was out. That was free, that was walking the streets, and that ultimately snuffed out the promising and beautiful young life of a man who was looking to make something of himself and contribute to this country that he chose to live in. So it's absolutely disgusting. I don't have a lot to add. I don't know what you say in a tragedy like this, except for we need to hold politicians accountable for more serious reforms on justice in Canada. And I think also, if you're looking, and if you feel like I do, just like a pit in your stomach, this is an absolute tragedy, and you would like to support Mr. Singh's family, we'll put the link link to the GoFundMe in the show notes for on the podcast and on YouTube. As mentioned, that's to support his family. A man by the name of Jespo Singh Nirman is the one that created this GoFundMe, describing the deceased as a kind-hearted and hard-working young man, a senseless act of violence, leaving his family, friends, and loved ones shattered and struggling to cope with this devastating loss. I don't know if this is still the case, but I had heard that Harshandeep's dad, and I can't, I have a hard time talking about this kind of parent to understand how hard this would be, but if you are, you get it. I guess my understanding is that his dad has been having such a difficult time with this that they've not actually informed many of their family members. Many of their family members don't even know about this yet, because this is just something that his father is finding so difficult to process and to wrap his mind around. On our live chat, powered by Park Power, Josh says, great summary, Jespo. You nailed it. This justice system of ours has failed, and Canadian citizens are the ones paying. Josh, I agree with you. He says enough is enough. I think of the bludgeoning deaths of those two men in Chinatown in Edmonton just last year, beaten to death by a man who was it was the same sort of a thing, right? And he was out in Alberta Beach. Remember this? And RCMP just basically dropped him off in downtown Edmonton. And what did he do? Like a day later, went and killed two innocent people. White says the entire justice system, not just policing, is underfunded. Says prosecutors, this is 100% true. Prosecutors, judges, facilities, jails, therapists, food, room and board type stuff. Says it's expensive, but that does mean increased taxes. M. Aitken says, my son carries a firearm in his job, and I'm scared for him every single day. Sylvia says nobody would be forced anywhere at gunpoint if we didn't allow so many guns. I mean, I guess, I don't know the situation here. Something tells me that Evan Rain didn't probably go through the proper process to legally procure a shotgun or whatever weapon it is that he used there. But hey, I'm open for conversations on gun control. I do think that it's probably a different conversation than in the United States, where it's obviously very, very different. But still in Canada, I mean, gun violence, in particular in the big cities, is an issue. Handguns in particular. And Tracy wondering, do we know why the armed couple was in the building? We don't. But Josh says judges need to be held accountable as well. Their decisions are having an impact on our safety. Reform and education is needed for our judges and those involved in the judicial system. Cactus Sheriff not wrong in saying we don't have a justice system, we have a legal system. And that's true. There is no justice. What does justice look like for this young man's family? Like, honestly, what does justice look like? Like, to be crude for a second, if you gave this young man's father an opportunity to kick Evan Rain down the stairs and shoot him in the back, do you think that Harshandeep Singh's father would feel any better about it? Of course he wouldn't. And he wouldn't do it. But do you think he'd feel is that justice? Like, is eye for an eye justice? I don't know. I'll tell you one thing. 29 charges after a violent robbery involving firearms, or a different scenario, kidnapping a woman at gunpoint, locking her in the trunk of a car. How is that person out? Like, at what point? At what point do you say, and in Canada, some of you, lawyers would quite rightfully point out, well, we do have, you can be categorized or classified as a dangerous offender, and then, you're basically locked away for life without parole. It's true. But, like, if Evan Rain's not a dangerous offender, who is? Like, who is? Right? So I guess all I'm saying this, I wanted to acknowledge this. I wanted to honor this young man and talk about this, maybe put the GoFundMe on your radar, but also light a fire under you, Real Talkers. I feel the fire in my belly on this, and it's mixed with wanting to puke because of how terrible this story is. This young man who did absolutely nothing. I mean, and even by me indicating that, what a stupid thing for me to say, like as if he had done something, he'd deserve to be kicked down the stairs and shot in the back. But an innocent man just doing his job, and on the job for 3 days. You hear about these stories, these horrific stories, the folks driving the armored vehicles, the armored cars, stuff like that. They've been on the job a short period of time, and they pay for it with their life. Another story that we wanted to talk about, John, and this is one that's just been really weirding me out. I don't know about you, but this wild story making waves across the United States, basically the assassination of United Healthcare CEO Brian Thompson, the manhunt and the public reaction after that. And there has been an arrest made on this, but the background on this, so Brian Thompson's walking to an investor conference at a Midtown Manhattan hotel when a masked assailant approaches him, doesn't confront him, but shoots him multiple times, again from behind, with a silenced pistol, and then fled on a bike. This happened just blocks from like major landmarks like Radio City Music Hall. The New York police quickly launching a manhunt following clues from surveillance footage and evidence left at the scene. Reportedly, bullet casings were inscribed with phrases like deny, defend, and depose, which possibly and probably references a book that's been critical of insurance practices.
Oh, yeah.
Which obviously relates to this man's job, to Brian Thompson's job as the CEO of United Healthcare. But here's what really caught my attention, this manhunt captivating the public. I mean, they were talking about it on Saturday Night Live, for Pete's sakes. But leads ranging from the suspect's bike route, potential connections with cyber attacks on that company earlier in the year. Ultimately, this suspect apprehended Luigi Mangione, 26 years old, from an affluent family. He's an Ivy League graduate.
Ivy League, yeah.
But what I thought was really weird, and this is a developing story, and there will obviously be more details to come as New York police reveal them, as charges are laid, et cetera. But kind of the lighthearted tone that this story's taken on is the one that's really weirding me out, with like memes and jokes. There was like a look-alike contest that they held in New York where everybody showed up dressed like the shooter, and they were handing out prizes. People are pointing to the healthcare company's reputation for denying claims. And basically, I think in a way, kind of using that to justify the cold-blooded murder of the CEO. And so I just, that was kind of where I thought might be interesting to put in front of Real Talkers. It's a window really into broader societal frustrations, maybe more so in the United States than Canada, but certainly not limited to the United States, with corporate power and with the healthcare system. And this is one I think that'll go down in history as just an absolutely bizarre scenario where there's I hate to put it this way, but there appears to be very little public sympathy for the family of Brian Thompson, or for Brian Thompson himself, who was shot in cold blood.
I don't know about that.
People are celebrating the shooter, though.
Oh yeah, it's disgusting.
People think it's funny.
I mean, people are like, "Oh, good. So what?" Like, it's fucking ridiculous. Like claiming this guy's like a hero or a vigilante. But a little more about him. I was reading that some friends he went to high school with said he had a pretty serious back surgery that kind of changed everything in his life for him. He also had some anxiety. Where's this thing I'm looking at? He had some anxiety problems. He often tweeted and posted about it on his social media. So you've got a guy who went through some back surgery, and maybe he wasn't fully compensated. I don't know. I don't want to draw any conclusions. But then also dealing with anxiety. And I mean, here's the thing, though. We've all, like, insurance providers, they suck. We've all, whether it's auto insurance or a claim through health or whatever, we've all been denied. We've all paid high fees. And so I get that tone that's everywhere. But at the end of the day, even if, no matter who this CEO was, and we all have our own moments where we hate fucking CEOs as well, it's a human being who was killed in cold blood in broad daylight, in public. And that's not something we want to, wave a flag for at all.
Yeah. And even in our live chat, like some of the comments, I just kind of don't, I just am not on the same page as some of you. Dubious says this is the biggest story for the class war that's happened in maybe ever. And maybe it is, but Travis, for example, says I just lost the comment because there's so many of you chiming in. This is great. Travis says, LOL. Like, first of all, LOL, dude, really? But he says, LOL. How are people not taking this as a wake-up call about how the poors feel about Brian's class of people, Brian being the CEO? Okay, like, number one, the alleged killer, not poor. Number one,
not at all.
His family
Ivy
lives in a
League.
gated community. He's an Ivy League graduate. His relatives are executives and elected representatives.
He's valedictorian.
Like number one, that's wrong. And number two, like, seriously? So like now, like, you feel a certain way about a certain class of people, so throw a hoodie on and blast them away on Madison Avenue or wherever it is, or Jasper Avenue or Stephen Avenue down in Calgary or Robson Street. Like because there's a confrontation or because you don't see eye to eye with that other class of people, right? People are talking about how everyone's drinking the classist Kool-Aid. Like this is a cold-blooded murder in front of other people on a crowded street in the busiest city in the world. Like that just to me is absolute insanity to start talking about this, about how, well, there's like a class war and this is an indicator. And like I get that people can't stand insurance companies. I've shared off air with you my frustration with my insurance company right now.
But a CEO doesn't, he's not the guy at the top. First of all, he's not the guy reading your claim and reviewing it and denying it. And the other thing is, so what's the standard now? Like if you're unhappy with someone who runs a business, owns a business, has more money than you, whoever you're angry with, you can blow them away on the street. That's what I have a problem with. You can get mad about insurance. Like I said, I don't think there's anyone, an adult out there who's listening or like anywhere today that hasn't had some grievance with some insurance company at some point.
But can we all agree that if you have a grievance with a company, the solution is never to kill the CEO?
No. And after the fact, going on social media and celebrating it is what really kind of disgusts me. It just the tone of everything. It just makes me so scared for today.
Weird.
It's disgusting.
Ytrium says the only shocking thing is that this hasn't happened earlier. The insurance industry is predatory, maximum pain for maximum profit. Tony says, is this the modern version of storming the Bastille? Says, is this an off with their heads moment? Like, do we really want to go there? 80s Fanify says, what about the people killed by this company's policies? Okay, like I understand what some of you are saying here, but like, are you honestly, like, are you teaching your kids that the appropriate response to this is to kill the CEO, to shoot the CEO in the back on the street? Like, honestly, folks? Idris says, I wouldn't be too quick to judge the masses or anybody else at this point. We can't truly understand how all these people feel, and I reserve all judgment. It's important for us to recognize the pain here. Sure. I just like, to me, I really do think it's wild, and I'm not sure that I want to live in a world where someone is murdered in cold blood, and all of a sudden there's like parties in the public squares. Like it just to me,
but
it's
again,
crazy.
Like we need to know the whole story here. Cause like you said, it's like if this kid needed back surgery or whatever, I say kid, cause that's when the back surgery allegedly happened. I mean, his family had the money. He's going to an Ivy League school. He had a degree in computer science. He was valedictorian. I don't understand. So there has to be a mental health issue here too as well. And we don't know the full story. If you go on X or any of these news sites, there's bits and pieces of this puzzle, but I don't think we know the whole viewpoint yet.
Super Chat Ken says the class war argument is ridiculous. He wasn't in the class who's being denied health care. He stopped connecting with family and friends. He was mentally ill. Ken says, I'm very familiar with the concept. And then some of you just have absolutely ridiculous comments that I'm not reading because they're so fucking stupid.
The other thing is
not reading them on the show. They don't deserve to be read on the show.
I think the painting of this picture from people who are agreeing with it and celebrating it is like someone at home with pain, can't get, the health, help they need, snaps one day, puts on a trench coat, grabs a gun or buys a gun on the street and kills someone. That's not what happened here. This guy had a fake ID. He had practiced with this gun. He had cell phone bags to block signals, to put his phone in after. Like, this was very carefully planned. This wasn't someone who one day just snapped from all the stress. So again, I just want to hear the whole story. I want to see in depth why this happened. This isn't just, like I said, this is someone whose family could have taken care of it for him, or he himself could have afforded some of this health, help. So I'm not sure what happened here. I mean, if you go on X, there's so many people like trying to piece this puzzle together because a lot of people saying super bright, super friendly, but isn't that always how it is?
You see that he was arrested in a McDonald's after a McDonald's worker called it in. This like sort of nationwide manhunt.
So he was wearing a mask the whole time.
But it was interesting because a lot of people I saw were cracking on the McDonald's worker and suggesting that the minimum wage earning McDonald's worker had betrayed like an entire class of Americans because they had called in a report that they believed that they saw a suspect at large. They believed that they saw a murder suspect in their McDonald's. And so they called the police, as you would expect them to do. But now it's turning into a betrayal that the McDonald's worker betrayed every American, I guess, that's not making a certain salary. So I just think it's bonkers. If you don't think that story is bonkers, I think that's bonkers too. But if you think I'm totally out to lunch, you can send us an email to talk@ryanjesperson.com. It feels like fodder for the flamethrower presented by the DQs of Northwest Edmonton
Probably
and Sherwood
is,
Park. Yeah. Talk@ryanjesperson.com is where you can give us your hottest takes. And of course, we'll put those out on Friday's episode. That's the final episode of every single week. Got an update as well coming up in just a second on that family, that Saskatchewan family that sold that rare case of hockey cards, the O-Pee-Chee cards, containing who knows how many Wayne Gretzky rookie cards. You know, there's Gretzky rookie cards, some of them selling for like $2 million plus a piece on the open market. That's coming up in just a quick second. But before we get there, did you notice what I have on the desk here, by the way, John? I've got these Satsuma oranges. Yeah. Do you see how easy the Satsuma is to peel? It's just so easy to peel. These are the original Japanese oranges.
These ones are peeling music.
Oh my gosh. Do you have some? This would be good peeling music. Thanks, pal. Look at this. I'm going to crush this thing. No orange tastes better, and these are only available for a limited time. Our friends at Friesen Brothers have the Satsumas in-house right now. These are the ultimate Christmas orange. Make sure you get them while they've got them. They're beautiful on a centerpiece. And of course, you know, everybody loves to just pick away at Christmas oranges while the family and friends are gathering through the holidays. The Satsumas come highly recommended. Oh my goodness. So good. Why did I take a big, huge bite while I still have to talk?
Are you okay?
I can. Friesen Brothers is Alberta grown and Alberta owned. At California Closets, they've got a great idea for that loved one in your life that has everything super hard to buy for. How about a free consultation for a custom closet or storage solution in the home? The home that you guys share, the one that has all the jackets piled up in the front entrance, the home that maybe you haven't been able to find your extension cords or your drill bits for like months and months and months. California Closets have you covered. Make the most of your space with their custom organizational systems. All of that starts with a free design consultation. You may think, well, I can't afford California Closets. You'd be surprised. They can work with any budget, and they can explain how. You can learn more details on their website. That's californiaclosets.ca. And if you're looking to change your employment situation in 2025, if you're an electrician, if you're an apprentice, if you're an installer, salesperson, if you work in HR or office management, Kubi Renewable Energy wants to hear from you. They're Canada's fastest growing solar company, and they're proudly based out of BC and Alberta, doing a bunch of work across Western Canada. Kubi Energy is hiring right now to make sure that they can hit the ground running in spring. They'll get you trained up through January, February, and then you're off. If you'd love to live in Lethbridge, Calgary, Edmonton, or Kamloops, or if you're already there, check out the careers link today at kubienergy.ca. So yeah, shout out to Real Talker Michael who put this story on our radar. I hadn't seen this, but it turns out we talked a lot on the show. Remember, we had Wayne Wagner in a while ago. People can check our archives from Wayne's Sports Cards and Collectibles. Mm-hmm. He was helping us understand why this unopened box of O-Pee-Chee hockey cards, this unopened case, so there's like a bunch of boxes in there, why it was obviously going to sell for so much. And you remember when this Saskatchewan family had found it and then sold it for $3.75 million US. It made headlines. Obviously, people were pretty excited to see that the Wayne Gretzky rookie cards, or that entire collection was going to go for so much. But I did not realize until Real Talker Michael put it on our radar that the high bidder in that auction never paid. The bidder never paid.
What do you mean they never paid?
They never paid. And so the Saskatchewan family ultimately had to settle. I mean, they still did all right, but they ultimately settled, I guess, what would have been for the next highest bid. So they ultimately sold them for $2.52 million US on Thursday. So just like less than a week ago.
And what was it before?
It was 3.75. Yeah. So they lost about $1.25 million US, which is a big deal. Mm-hmm. But it was not on my radar that the original high bidder on this had not paid. And I thought that was kind of interesting. You kind of wonder, like, what's going through their head. Maybe the person had second thoughts. I don't know. But they basically said, like, sales like this, maybe somebody's going to see the story. The bigger picture on this is it's got more and more people going into their attics, going into their garages, going into their storage rooms, looking to see what boxes they may have that are unopened.
This just makes me so mad. I've told this story a million times. I dated a girl. We moved to BC. I left a box of like unopened hockey cards, as well as like a Bobby Orr rookie card, full sets of cards that I'd opened. This was like my sports memorabilia box, and it went missing at her mother and father's home. Missing. But I could just picture her dad, what is this box here? Ripping it open, and I want that box back. But I mean, $2.5 million for something like, wasn't this like a fine too? It was like, you forgot it was there. So that's still a pretty good making out. But I myself, I'm going to say this again. I would open one box. I would open just one.
I agree.
Just one.
I think I would
just
have
to
opened,
have them in your hand.
Because Wayne was telling us. I remember when we did the interview. Like, it's a box. It's like a box. Like, I don't know. Like, I'm sort of, so Johnny's showing us now, for the benefit of those in the podcast, there's cases and cases and cases and cases and cases.
It's not one box. It's boxes
so
within a box.
You have to imagine that there are like multiple Gretzky rookie cards in there. And how could you not be tempted to open them all? What happens if you have 25 Gretzky rookie cards?
Boom!
I'm with you. And the funnier thing that Wayne told us when we talked to him is I said, so what's this buyer predictably going to do? He says, well, they're not going to open it. I said, what? He goes, no, you don't buy something like this to open it. You buy it to keep it closed. I'm wired differently.
Live a little. But I will say this. The guy who didn't pay probably has a partner, significant other, spouse who was like, what the fuck? There's no way you're spending $3.2 million on hockey cards. No, no, not today.
Yeah. We were watching Christmas Chronicles as a family the other night. I don't know if you're familiar with it.
Yeah, great show.
And
season one better than two.
Pretty funny scene where Santa needs wheels. Santa needs to get somewhere quick. And so he walks up to a guy in a restaurant and he says, you wanted this Mickey Mantle rookie card.
That's the first
when
episode
you were a little
of the
boy.
first. Yeah,
no, it's a movie. And he says, I'll give you this Mickey Mantle rookie card for your Porsche.
Yeah.
And the guy's date grabs it and says, we don't need this Mickey Mantle rookie, and rips it. And my son, who's 9, and he's just getting into collecting cards, he goes, how much would that be worth? And so he had kind of a fun family moment of pressing pause on the movie and researching
not about the money.
How much the Mickey Mantle rookie card is. And it turns out that the Mickey Mantle rookie card is the most expensive sports
most
card
sought after
in history.
Yeah, of course.
12.6 million US.
But to that guy, it's not about the money, right? It's about
maybe it's a little bit about
the sentimental value.
Maybe it's a little bit about the money.
I said episode because they got 2, but it's on
movies.
Netflix. But I love the Christmas Chronicles. Great program, movie, show.
Jeez. Are we going to do Hicks Picks again this year for Christmas movies?
I have already started because we have a period of time off here, so I've already started like a list of things I haven't watched this year that aren't that great, weren't good enough to like stop and watch, like The Joker 2, which you got the horrible reviews, but I want to watch it, right, with him and Lady Gaga and a bunch of other movies. So I'm gonna actually like tune out for a few days around the holidays and just veg. That's what I used to do when I was a kid. I'm sure our Real Talk live chatters do that as well. You just throw in movies for
we've already got them
3-4 days
chiming in on some of their favorites. Yeah, Tony says Bad Santa is the best Christmas movie of all time. Gosh. We might have to do a poll. We'll have to do a poll. Maybe not for the kids.
Not for Wyatt.
Hey, but as we wrap Real Talkers, in all seriousness, we do want to know where your heads are at on the stories that we're talking about. It could be the security guard here in Edmonton, the healthcare CEO in New York. It could be big tobacco. It could be what's happening in Syria, like we talked about with Rob Breckenridge yesterday, or something else. We want this to be your show, where you have a voice, where we talk about the things that really matter. Thanks to those of you that checked out this show on podcast, on YouTube, or on any of our social media platforms and told your friends about it. We'll be back at it again tomorrow. We'll talk to you then.
Real Talk is hosted by Ryan Jesperson. Executive producer Josh Dunford. Technical producer John Hicks. General manager Katie Cook-Chivers. Account coordinator Lawrence Derlego. Human resources Lena Shepard. Website design Mike Johnston. Voiceover by me, Carrie Skelton. Real Talk's editorial board is Supriya Dwivedi, Ahmed Ali, Brandy Morin, Ann Castleman, Corey Hogan, Harman Kandola, Catherine O'Neill, and Chris Henderson. Member Emerita, Julie Rohr. Real Talk is recorded in Edmonton, Alberta on Treaty 6 territory, the traditional and ancestral territory of the Cree, Dene, Blackfoot, Saulteaux, and Nakota Sioux, home to the Métis settlements and the Métis Nation of Alberta. Real Talk is a relay project. For more, check out ryanjesperson.com.